everybody. Welcome to the Fill Your Cup podcast. Today we have Faith, I almost said Steedman. We have Faith Northern on the podcast, and we're super excited. She is someone that I've kind of quite literally grown up with.
Yeah.
Like since I was like 7, maybe like 7 or 8. I've like always looked up to Faith. She's the one who got me involved in Miss Oklahoma organization, and she's always been like a big sister, always there. But yeah, okay, you introduce yourself, Faith, and then I'll ask you some questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Faith Northern, like Caitlin said. I've known her since she was a little tiny baby. We grew up dancing together. I used to compete in the Miss Oklahoma organization. I've since gotten married, so I'm done with that.
She's all cuffed up now.
Yeah, all cuffed up. But yeah, right now I'm kind of just seeing where life takes me, about to be moving and just hanging out,
in North Carolina. She's leaving Oklahoma, which we're sad, but it's honestly, it'll be good.
Yeah,
it'll be really good. So something I'm doing for all the episodes is I'm asking like the same question on just the first question.
Okay.
So something that I feel like is so important is like beneath purpose is joy and fulfillment, because I really talk about how like purpose isn't this tangible thing that you can find, but it's something you find yourself, and how joyfulness and fulfillment are also things similar to that. So where in like your life have you found that, like either joy or fulfillment or kind of both or that sort of thing?
Well, I'm sure we'll kind of get into it a little bit more, but really lately, in the last probably year or two, I've really kind of refocused my life centered around Christ. I kind of was falling off there for a little while. And really that's where I've been finding my joy and my fulfillment. And that looks like a lot of different things. It could be going on a walk and like listening to the Bible app or whatever. But it's really what my life has been focused around a lot, especially in the past year, just making friends from community groups at church, or making sure I'm at church, I'm invested, and I've been listening to more Christian music and things like that, and genuinely like I'm happier than I've ever been, and I've been really finding like significant joy and fulfillment in that lately.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to Allie, one of my other friends, the other day, and just how we both like we felt so heavily on like the stuff that we were taking in, like media wise, like movies, TV shows, and like even music. She was like, I honestly feel like I honestly see it like affecting me. And she was, I was telling her too, I was like, I'm actually so glad you said that, because I've been struggling with that like more recently, and just feeling like I want to be more careful about what I'm letting in and like really consuming, especially like specifically music. Yeah. Because I just noticed the difference whenever I've like a time where like, where I've like such a Christ-surrounded life and I do feel that joy. And then whenever I don't, I feel like I'm like waiting for those moments to be happy, you know? I agree with that. Yeah.
And I really noticed, I was like, there's specific artists that I listen to a ton of their music, and they have like very clearly shown that they have a very different life view than what I do, and believe in very different things. And I genuinely was like feeling a weight around my life when I just wasn't really, when I was kind of being careless about what I'm doing, and, you know, not to be like crazy and over thinking a lot of things. I just really want to like make sure that what I'm taking in. Exactly. And it's like I got rid of a lot of artists off my phone and stopped listening to certain music, and just really have been trying to focus in more on, like you said, being mindful. And the difference it's made is crazy.
It's like a big like it's a big, because we had like a playlist together where it was just like Target Run, like kind of like hype music, you know, like just having a good time. And we ended up, after we got off the phone that night, I texted her, I was like, okay, like I deleted our playlist, and we like made a new one, and it's just like super like wholesome songs. And I don't know, I just feel like that's, I mean, also coming back from like camp, like you just like kind of have that like, okay, like I see where I want to change things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm sure we'll end up talking about a lot of different things. But I guess let's just like start like from the beginning, kind of like a little bit about your story, you know, what you've gone through, and you know what you're comfortable with.
Okay. So kind of just a little bit about me to start is I have 4 sisters. One of them is a twin. And also growing up, I was homeschooled my whole life. My dad was a youth pastor when I was a kid. So we grew up on a single income for 7 people, and it was rough for our family for a long time. And I kind of grew up, people always kind of assumed I knew a lot about the gospel and about God and about the Bible and about all these things because my dad was a pastor. But in reality, my dad was at work. I mean, they instilled Christian values, but I kind of felt like people kind of overlooked us a little bit, thinking that we didn't really need to learn things that other kids were learning. In reality, I ended up
needing that almost more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then like misunderstanding a lot of things about the Bible and what the Bible says and what is truth and what is not. And so fast forward, I struggled being a twin growing up because I am independent almost to a fault, and she is not. So she always wanted to dress the same and do the same things, and she was totally content with everyone thinking that we were exactly the same. And I, at like 8 years old, would like cry all the time, being like, I'm my own person.
You're like, absolutely not.
Yeah, I hated it. It was so hard. People were like, do you like being a twin? I'm like, no, I love my twin, but I don't like
You're like,
being
I
a
love
twin.
her forever.
Yes.
But
yeah. So fast forward, I had a lot of like just misconceptions of what life was like. And I had this belief that if you were a Christian, nothing bad would happen to you. And obviously that's not the case. In fact, the Bible says quite the opposite. But I was always taught that God's a loving God. And as a kid, I didn't understand how a loving God would let anything bad happen to anyone. So I thought nothing bad would ever happen to me.
Right.
And it was really when I was 13 years old, I started to struggle with my mental health. I think it was over like Christmas season that year, 2014. And our family had 6 people very close to us pass away within the course of a month. And so I just remember all of us were just super broken. And at 13 years old, I just didn't understand. And I was thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get close to anyone because they're going to die. Like, that's genuinely what I thought. And so, and I was too young to really understand anything or like.
It's hard to have a different train of thought.
Exactly.
Almost, with like that many.
So I really kind of started to spiral. And I also like didn't know how to ask for help or what to do. And so, and a lot of people didn't notice that there was anything wrong because I was really good at hiding it. And it just kind of started a downward spiral that really didn't end until probably 2021. I was just really depressed. I was struggling. I wasn't eating. I was harming my body. I wasn't treating myself well. I was in really toxic relationships and just kept finding myself in more toxic relationships because I genuinely just didn't understand. And had a very warped view of what love was in terms of for myself and receiving it from other people. And so it really took until around 2021 and I just know the Lord used my husband in a strong way. He really, when I met him, he was a Christ follower. It was the very first relationship I ever had where I felt like someone like wanted to love me without anything, like any expectations or anything in return. And he kind of pushed me to be going back to church and kind of figuring out what was going on. And I specifically remember, we've talked about this before with, like I used to struggle really hard with panic attacks. And I remember my first panic attack with him and I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to break up with me. He's going to think I'm crazy. And he was like teaching me military breathing exercises. I was like,
which is like so on brand.
He is in the military. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's actually being so nice.
Like he's actually helping me. This is great.
Yeah. But that's just kind of like the general overview of a lot of it. It took a long time to get to where I am now. And just like a lot of different things had happened within those years. But it was a lot. And I'm not upset about any of it. I'm really thankful for the experiences I've had and for, where I am now and the fact that I've also, through pageants, was able to advocate for mental health and also kind of while being in the middle of it,
Yeah, I was kind of touching on that a little bit ago, and just how like I kind of sit here as an advocate and like someone who empowers people around me, but that's really not to say that like I'm all good and dandy, I'm just kind of taking everything with a grain of salt. Like I definitely learned that healing and growth isn't linear. And whenever people say that you go through mountains and valleys, like, you really go through mountains and valleys over and over again. I remember, like, the very first, like, hard season of life I had, I, like, got through it, and I was like, okay, now I've got, like, my little story.
That's what I thought, too. I was like, it's all done.
We're good. And then, like, it just kept coming back.
And you're like, okay, wait a second. I
was like, hold up. And then you keep coming back, and it's different every time.
Yes.
But I think that's really a testament to how you can inspire people, like, in this world today, because I feel like a lot of people just sit in the suck almost. They kind of just, like, they feel it, and then it's a lot of just, like, finding outwardly things that make them feel better. And some of those, yes, are good. Like, some of those are good things, but a lot of the times it's having to relook at, like, your own life and what your perspective is. Like, I just, even whenever it comes to, like, pageants, since we have that, I was gonna say since we have that in common, but we have most things in common. Like, you know, you walk away, most of the time you'll walk away not winning something, whether that be a local or state or whatever. And, like, it's having to look at that and be like, okay, this isn't really a no. It's just God's yes for something else that's happening in my life. Like, even leading up to Miss Oklahoma's Teen Week, I was prepping really hard. Like, I was prepping hard the whole year. I had done a lot of work through Fill Your Cup and in schools and all these things. And I was like, this is, like, I'm ready. Like, I was like, I'm ready. And not that I don't believe still that I was ready for that, but the whole week leading up to it, I was very at peace. Like, super at peace. And everyone was like, you know, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And I was like, honestly, like, I don't want to say nothing, but, like, I just feel, like, really at peace. Like, I'm content with, like, if I don't get this, it's not going to be a loss, you know? It's just God preparing me for something else coming up in my life. And I walked away in the top 5 that a good friend of mine won, and I love her. But yeah, I kind of, like, just walked into the season of, like, okay, like, what's the next step? What do I want to do now? And I feel like that almost kind of opened up doors for, like, me starting this podcast. Like, I had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, hey, like, I want to keep hearing more, and I think that you should really do this. And I was like, I don't know if, like, that's a me thing. Like, people are great at that, but, like, I don't know if that's a me thing that I would really excel at. And I think that God really kind of uncovered that to me. Is like, this is, like, it's your time. Like, it's now. And even, like, walked away from Miss Oklahoma City this past weekend, and I was like, okay, like, I got this. I was like, round 2, again, local season. And I walked away top 5. And another one of my best friends, like, I love her, got the title. And now I'm just like, okay, like, what, like, I'm ready, God, like, what's next? But
it really teaches you a lot.
Yeah. Like, I don't even know where I was going with that, but
I remember my last year competing. I competed in 7 locals before I won. And the year before, I won the first local I ever did. So
and you're like, oh.
I was like, I mean, not that I thought that I was necessarily going to win some at the very beginning of the season, but I didn't expect to do 7. And I kept placing. I got first runner up 5 times, and I remember after the last one I was like, I think I'm done. Like, I just think it's not for me. I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this again. And my mom was like, no, you should just try again. Like, you're already signed up for this next one. Do it. And I mean, there were so many things that could have made the day turn out different. I got food poisoning the day of. I fell down the stairs. And I had, like, my legs were all cut up. I
remember you telling me
I was in my interview. They were like, what happened to your legs? I was like, honestly, I fell down the stairs this morning. It's been a long day.
And that's the most faith thing you'll ever hear.
And I won. And I was like, you know what? That's just God. Because any other day, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm not winning. Like, would have been totally in my head. But at that point, I was already like, what do I have to lose? I don't think I want to do it anymore anyways. And it worked out. And I'm glad I did it.
That was like my first year. Like, whenever I won, by the time I'd gone to EOC, like, I'd probably done 5 or 6 locals by that point. And I was like, I was like, maybe this isn't for me, you know? Like, most people I know have won by this point. And Mom was like, no, you're already signed up for EOC. Like, just do it. And I ended up winning that one and got my ticket to state. And I was definitely like, that, I'll tell anyone, too, they're like, how was your first year? I was like, Miss Oklahoma was not my priority my first year. Because that was my, like, that was whenever my mental health was at a really, really low state. And I was like, I need to focus on getting Caitlin back before I try to win something that while being not myself.
Yeah.
You know? So I was able to kind of, like, get the lay of the land, because you hear, like, some people, like, Sydney, like, one of my good friends, she, like, went in and, like, won that thing first try. But I was definitely just, like, getting lay of the land, and then I was able to go into this last year, like, I didn't, and I think it's, like, so interesting, too. It definitely teaches you, like, accepting yourself, almost, because last season, I didn't get anything at OKC at all, like at Miss OKC. And then I went to Brookside Tulsa and won. And I was like I was like, okay, like, and people go not make the top 10 at Miss Oklahoma and then win the very first local. And I think it definitely, from dance and from pageants, it's definitely taught me a lot of, like, and it's still hard. It's still really hard. It's a daily decision that I have to make, but it's taught me a lot of, like, it's not personal. Yeah. Almost.
Yeah, kind of how to handle rejection.
Like, honestly, like, okay. It's true. Like, you're like, okay.
And, yeah, trusting God and trusting that you're going to be where you're supposed to be no matter what.
Yeah. Well, because your life looks so different than what you're going through just a couple years ago. If you want to, like, kind of maybe touch on, like, just, like, mentally, how you felt, and, like, because I obviously, we weren't, like, as close then, but, like,
but you've seen
but I've seen you in, like, very different states, and I'm sure that, like, who you are today, like, you didn't envision.
Not at all. Even if you would have just asked me 2 years ago, if I thought at this point I'd be married, I'd be moving to my favorite state, and, you know, starting my career, and doing, like, I would have been probably laughing in your face. It's kind of crazy to look back on that version of myself, because it feels like such a different person, and kind of like you said, like, I still have my days. Like, mental health is a struggle that I don't know that really anyone ever fully, like, is 100% over.
Recovers.
Like, yes, and that's not to discourage anyone, but just you learn how to work with it, and you learn yourself, and you learn what maybe is going to put you off, and, you know, what kind of help you need, and things like that. And doing that and putting in that work has gotten me to where I am now. But 2 years ago, I honestly did not know that I would have even been alive right now, if I'm honest. And I had, in the past, like, when I was a teenager up until now, there's been multiple times where I've not wanted to be where I am now, and God has just intervened in such insane ways that make absolutely no sense sometimes. I'm like, I should not be alive. And even just kind of going back, I got to a point in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, where I was feeling good. I had just gotten out of a really, really bad relationship, and I wasn't well necessarily, but I felt like I was kind of starting to get myself back again, and being like,
okay, like, I see maybe that light.
Yes, I'm like, okay, this is a time for me to, like, really figure out who I am again, and get back to who I was, and start over and heal from what the past year has had. And kind of right when I was kind of getting my bearings, I got really ill. I was really sick for about a month, and I almost died. My liver failed. And it was just, like, such a weird thing that had occurred to even get me sick. But I genuinely thought I was gonna die.
Which is such, like, that headspace to be in. Like, you're like, this isn't even, like, something that I'm controlling. Like, to be quite frank, it wasn't even something like, this is, like, a suicidal thought. You're like, it's I might be dying.
And it was like, there had been times in my life where I thought I would maybe die, and I thought it would be because of myself, if I'm being honest. But it almost felt like kicking, like, just I got kicked to the ground right as I was climbing up, because I was to the point where I was happy to be alive. I was excited to be alive. I was excited to see what the next year had for me. And then I thought I was going to die. I genuinely thought I was going to die. And I specifically remember going to the hospital one day, and my doctor telling my mom, this is really bad. They know you're coming. Like, you need to be prepared to stay for a long time. Like, she might need a liver like just all these things. And I was so ill, I couldn't even talk at the time. I was so lethargic. And I just remember like seeing my whole family saying bye to me when I got to the hospital, and they're all crying. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to die.
You're like, okay.
And obviously that didn't end up happening. The Lord, I was saved and I was okay. But it kind of, I felt like I had to start all over at that point, because then I was a little bit traumatized.
Yeah, it's hard to see the...
I was in...
Even though that's, like, such, like, a miraculous situation, it's still hard to see the hope in that situation.
And by the time I was getting healthier again, I was very unhealthy weight-wise, and I started getting back into a headspace I did as a teenager when I wasn't eating, and I liked the way that I looked. And so then I started gaining weight because I needed to. I wasn't even 100 pounds, and I was 20 years old, and...
Yeah.
I didn't like it, and it just sent me spiraling again. And so it was just hard. It was a lot, and it just took a lot to get to where I am now. And even, I'm not gonna lie, even now there's some days I'm like, oh my gosh,
you're like, what?
I could lose a little weight, but I'm like, no, that's not true. I have to remind myself, I'm like, I'm the healthiest I've ever been.
Yeah,
I'm doing well. I'm in a happy, loving relationship. I'm in a good place with the Lord. Like, my life is good. I'm very blessed.
Yeah.
Don't let
almost
yourself
like
get
those
there.
daily, like, just like daily reminders of gratitude. Almost.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me personally, I wouldn't, like, I'm not someone who does the manifesting thing, and some people, like, love it, but I almost, like, for me, it's, like, just being thankful for, like, okay, like, this is the life I have, and this is what I'm thankful for, because even recently, like, I've gone through some pretty, like, within the past, like, 2 weeks, I've had some pretty crazy panic attacks / like kind of spiritual things going on, and I've had to, they've been like scary, and like for anyone that's experienced like a panic attack or just that like release of energy in some sort, like it's exhausting. Like the next day I was just in bed all day, and then I kind of like, you kind of learn how to put on a face, almost like I laid in bed that whole day, but then the next day I had to be at Palm, like, learning choreo and just be like, hey, like, I'm all good, you know? Like, bada bing, bada boom, I'm here for you guys, like, let's go team. And then kind of go back and be like, even scared to, like, go to church camp just because I was scared to leave Mom and Adam. Like, I was like, I don't know if I can be away from you guys because of how fearful I am of what's happening. And it's like that daily struggle, especially whenever you're in the midst of it. Like, I was kind of, obviously, like, going through very different things, but, like, struggling a lot with my anxiety back in 2021, especially, like, my sophomore year. And, like, it's this mix of, like, feeling so hopeless, but then also, like, being like, okay, guys, hi. Like, you go back into the world, and you're like, all right, like, I have to, you feel like there's, like, these expectations almost. And something that I've just been working on so hard, and like a big goal of mine is to help like influence that break, is mental health is such a buzzword right now, and everyone's like, like, it's okay, it's normalized, da 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 da, but then like, it's normalized, but like nobody is actually saying like how to cope with it and how to heal with it. Or you'll talk about having anxiety, or maybe you think you might be going through that, and people around you be like, everybody says they have anxiety, or da 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 da, like you're just nervous, or they're like, oh, like everybody's like that, like it's okay. And I'm like, okay, but like what am I supposed to do? And that's been the difference of like, I feel like even Fill Your Cup has shown me like, okay, like I have these tools and I've been able to find them, but like, am I using those things? So like, even whenever I went through a breakup a couple months ago, I like, one of the biggest things I talk on is connections with the people around you, because that like holds you up so much. And I mean, after we had broken up, I was just with my friends and like my people like all the time. And for a solid 2 weeks, probably at least, I was like, I didn't really sit with myself. And like for some people, that's what they need. And I get that, because like I'm definitely like an introverted extrovert, and my social battery goes out really quick. So I get that. But I was also like, I can't be with myself right now.
Yeah.
Like, my mind races back to that. And I just surrounded myself with the people that loved me. And they're like, okay, like, every time I had one of my friends from Palm, she was like, every time you want to text them, she was like, just text me.
Yeah.
She was like, you're good. And I knew for me, like, I was still in, like, gain mode. And I think as I've, like, I set such high standards for myself that I was like, okay, like, I need to keep it together and I need to keep going. I was still traveling across the state doing events, like, a day after I had gone through a breakup, when most people get to just, like, have that comfort. I was out in the middle of Tulsa, like, talking to these kids and, you know, having to put on this face. And then I was prepping for Miss Oklahoma, and I was like, I need to do the things, one, that, like, are healthy for me. I need to cope with this. I need to process this. But, like, I also need to keep myself going.
Yeah.
And, like, in that time, that was doing the things that brought me joy. That was surrounding myself with people. That was working out. And I was like, okay, like, I'll do this. So, like, I guess from your point of view, what have been some of those things, since you've been in so many different areas of life, whether it be from dance or whether it be from, you know, cheer, or what you've struggled with family or relationships, like, what have been, like, things you've found that, like, help, like, tangible things that, like, help you?
Yeah. So very similarly.
Aside, of course, Christ. Like, yes,
But like you said, community is a big thing, and that was something I even had in my mind to touch on, and I honestly just forgot.
Yeah.
But when I look back on when I look at where I am now and my struggle with mental health and how it's still very much a part of my life, it's different because I have a community. And I used to be the other way around in the past, where I would go through things and I would be by myself.
Yeah.
And I learned that's not good.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, if you've never struggled with mental health, and you don't really understand the feeling of, like, to be literally afraid of yourself and afraid to be alone with yourself. And I got to the point where I was like, it is not safe for me to be alone with myself. I should not. I can't. Yeah. And so, but I didn't have very, I think specifically if I'm looking back at 2021, after I had gotten out of this relationship, I didn't have pretty much any friends. Yeah. I had a couple, but I was very much isolated from everyone. And so I had my family, but it can sometimes be difficult. Yes, it can be difficult to share things with your family sometimes. And I had one good friend, but that's also a lot to put on one person. Right. And so I just was alone a lot of the time. Now I've taken the time to really invest in having a solid support system, a good group of friends, not just for me, but also for my husband. We have good counselors for the two of us. So if I'm going through something, he's going through it too. That's just the reality. We're a team. And so he's not going to leave me by myself to, like, be struggling. If we're having a problem, he's going to help me reach out, you know what I mean? Like, to people. And I really can't stress that. And this is not to say that you need a relationship to be okay, but you need people in your life. You need that accountability. Yeah, and just people who are there making sure that you're not alone when you can't be alone. But again, like I said, not just one person, like, a community, building a community
because still you don't want to put that on that one person.
Exactly, that's a lot. I would not do that. That's a lot. But that has helped me a lot, just having a community. But also, do not underestimate the power of journaling. I will say, I love to literally retweet. I literally love the amount of journaling I did whenever I was depressed. Yes, and you know what? And it's like, in some way, it's kind of sad to look back on, but it's helpful for me to look back on some of the things that I would journal about back then and be like, man, you're like, wow, I'm a very different person now. And it also just makes me so much more thankful on days that I do have hard days, that I am then reminded again of, like,
you, like, got out of it.
I'm in such a better place. My hard days today are nothing compared to what they used to be, and I'm very thankful for that. And even if, I know that there's going to be hard times, like, I know I'm going to go through things in life that are difficult, and there may even be times that are more difficult than what I've experienced before, but just to always to have that community, to journal, to process your thoughts, to be grateful for the things that you have when you have them. Even, like, when I'm driving to work, I get to work and I say, thank you, God, that I got to work safe, when you kind of are able to switch your mindset, it's not going to cure everything, but it definitely helps.
But it helps change the mindset. And I think I heard someone say this the past week, and they were talking specifically about prayers. But I was going back, like, I was talking about journaling, too, because, like, me, too, like, journaling was, like, I look back, and I can see the tear stains on the page because of, like, how much I was struggling, like, even getting it in words. But they were, like, they kind of, and I'm sure I'll botch this up, but they were kind of saying, like, in the moment, those thoughts are very real thoughts, but those thoughts are your feelings. And they're like, feelings are fleeting and they go away. Yep. Which is so true. Yeah. And they were like, whenever you write them down, they're like, that doesn't leave. Not saying that those feelings are never going to leave you. But that way you can look back and see that growth. And I'm really bad about, like, still journaling whenever I'm in, like, a joyful season of life. Because I'm like, oh, I'm good. Like, I don't even, like, want to think about that. Yeah. But I look back, and even in my hardest moments, sometimes I'll look back to even worse ones I've had and been like, dang, like, I remember. Yeah. Like, documenting it, I like it floods back, and in a very encouraging way. Yeah. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, like, I got through that, and I figured out what to do, and that day was really hard, but I woke up the next day and it felt like a little bit better. Yeah. And some days it didn't. Some days it didn't. Some days I felt horrible and I went to sleep, and then I went to school the next day and that day was horrible too. Yeah. And that would last a week. Yeah. But I think finding, again, like, just those joy in the little things, like the amount of sunsets I went and watched, and I was just like always taking pictures of it. I was always journaling and writing, like, how I felt. And, like, whenever I wrote, I remember I talked to my therapist a lot about this whenever I was struggling a lot. And I would write down 10 things every day that I was like, oh, God, like, bless me with that. Or maybe by the end of the week, because I'm sure I forgot most of the time. But it was literally, like, the weirdest, like, the most random things. Like, I remember I would sit there and I'd be like, oh, the sunlight coming through my window right now is, like, giving me, like, a little burst of serotonin. Yeah. And I would write it down. And I look back in those journals and I wrote down, like, the littlest experience. Yeah. But I was like, okay, like, if I can find this, like, it's good. Or if, like, me and my friend would go get coffee, and, like, some people would be like, oh, it's just, like, been a busy day. But I remember being like, oh, getting coffee with Brooklyn at Mentality, like, that saved me that day.
Yeah, and it's like, and it really does put you in a mindset of being able to recognize those things. And I also think, I don't know if you are like this, but I know sometimes when I'm having a panic attack or I'm having a really hard time and I'm just feeling really depressed, I can sometimes spiral a little bit, especially if I've been journaling.
I start overthinking whenever I start, when I can tell I'm having a panic attack, I start overthinking. Something small
turns into something big, and I'm not always thinking clearly. And so journaling, I can also kind of look back and also be like, girl, you're being a little bit delusional. And
she was doing too much.
Yes, but also kind of recognize and have a better mindset going forward that when you are like that, you're not in the right headspace. Don't make crazy decisions. Don't be irrational. Like, and so then, and I know it's easier said than done, but it has worked. I mean, over time, now I have a panic attack and I can say, okay, I know I'm not thinking clearly, and I can have that actual thought in my head. I'm not thinking clearly. Don't do anything that you're gonna regret tomorrow. Don't be doing anything that is life altering. Right. You're not thinking clearly. And that's helpful as well. But then also, like you said, journaling, even when I'm happy. I mean, I was looking through, I got a journal like just a couple months ago. It's already filled up because I've just been journaling.
You're like, yes, yes.
And I was like looking at it as well. I like to go through, and I like to like show Ridge, my husband, when I write things about him or whatever. And I was like, best part of my day is my credit score went up 14 points. And I'm like, okay, you're an adult, win. But just find, you don't understand that yet, but like finding the little things to celebrate and just kind of having that mindset.
You're like, yes, okay, that's a win. Yes, that is a win
a
for
big
the day.
win. A big win.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like that covers a lot of bases, but just like, I feel like I can, as someone who looked up to you for so long, I feel like I just see this like just like 180 of a person, and like you're still Faith, like you've always been like very Faith. Like after, I remember when I was like 9, I was like, how do I tell apart Faith and Hope? And then someone was like, Faith is the one with the like blonde streaks in her hair.
Yeah, or I always wore black.
Or she always wore black. And I was like, okay. But like I look back and like you've always been like consistently you, but you being so like healthy and positive, and like you're definitely, I think we're both similar in the way of we're not bubbly people.
Not
I would say.
Together we are.
Yeah, it's like together. Right. But like we're very positive.
Yeah.
Very positive. So much hope for the future, but like very real.
Yes.
And I'm not gonna, I think a lot of people, especially like interview coaches I've worked with, they're like, I'm sorry, but I won't like giggle in my interview.
Yeah.
I won't.
I'm not gonna be like,
I'm butterfly. I'm witty as heck, but like I'll make them laugh.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, after dealing with some of the things you deal with, it makes you want to, at least for me, like I won't put these words in your mouth, but like for me, I want to be real, to be more tangible for the people around me, because most of the people around us are struggling. Just most of them aren't gonna say something, and most of them just keep it to themselves. And there's so many people that I'm like, even like I have a friend of mine who comes off as this very popular guy, like, you know, he's lots of friends and all these things, but he'll be texting me and he's like, he's like, I don't want to die, but he's like, I don't feel good. And he's like, and I just like, okay, like if someone feels ready to open up, I'll be like, okay, and I'll kind of pursue it. But I think it's just because I'm so real about it, and I'm gonna be like, you're okay.
Yeah, no.
Because that's almost like, no, like you are going through something, and I've talked him through it a lot, and I've been like, okay. And I've literally told him, I'm like, okay, like fill your cup, Jonathan. Like, you know, like I'm like, okay, like who, like what friends, like what people did you surround yourself with today? I was like, what brings you joy? And he'd be like talking about art or music or stuff like that. And I'm like, okay. And then by the end of the day, I'll like every couple days we'll like start texting again. And I'm like, all right. He'll be like, I didn't have a very good day. I'm like, did you like listen to that music you love? Did you do the stuff you love? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, like there you go. Like, that doesn't fix it. But I was like, that gives you something to be like, okay, like that was a win. Like all the little wins make it so much better.
And it's like, I just kind of want to, anyone who's kind of struggling with this whole mental health situation, it's almost like you kind of have to challenge yourself in a way. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you probably felt this way too, that at some point you kind of get comfortable with where you're at. I know I did. And I struggled for 4 years before anyone ever even knew. And I was comfortable with it because I didn't really, I started really struggling with mental health when I was 13. And so that's still pretty young. It's young. And a very impressionable age. And so,
especially to deal with it by yourself too.
Yeah. I honestly don't remember much of not feeling that way. Unless it's like when I was a little tiny child and I have like little kid memories. But like everything from when I feel like I'm old enough to make my own decisions has always been struggling.
It's been based on this like kind of baseline of struggle.
Yeah, and I got really comfortable with it for a long time, and it's like I was comfortable being uncomfortable. I didn't really know how to fix it, and I didn't really care to figure it out. I was just like, well, this is just how I am. This is how I'm always going to be. Yeah. And in some capacity, I am going to be more vulnerable, and like I am going to be more susceptible to feeling depressed or like dealing with these things. But you can't just be comfortable. You got to really.
You don't want to sit in the work. You don't want to sit in the suck.
No, you got to put in the work to figure out what you said, what fills your cup, and how do you really want to look at life, and what can you be doing to kind of push yourself in that direction, and I think about back to doing pageants, and you kind of have to put on a brave face, and they kind of all expect you in some capacity to just be like the really happy-go-lucky pageant girl. And I've always wanted to be real. I've always wanted to be different than that. I've always wanted to be able to share what I'm going through, and not just, yes, mental health is a problem, but let's get into it.
But let's fix it, you know?
And let's figure it out. And my last time competing at Miss Oklahoma, I did 6 days after I got out of the hospital. And that was the most vulnerable I'd ever been. I was I'm just going to tell you, I shouldn't be here. Last week I was on my deathbed.
Yeah.
But, it's the amount of opportunities that I've gotten through that, and people coming in when you're real and you talk about it, and you kind of come off more like a human, and I'm someone you can talk to. I mean, the amount of people who have reached out to me, and the way we've been able to connect, and this wouldn't be happening.
There's just a level of people that you reach because they're I think it always comes back to you never know who you're touching, you know?
You never know what people have gone through.
Right, you never know what people have gone through. And I look back, and the people that have reached out to either me personally, some people have called me, some people have reached out to Fill Your Cup and been like, this is honestly saving me, or I know someone who needs this, I'm sending them that video, and I wanted you to know that. At the same time, I have people calling me making fun of Fill Your Cup. Yeah. I've had people that I've dealt with in the past, quite literally making a mockery of it, and I have to hear it, and I used to have a relationship with these people. Yeah. And it's just, it's
the reality.
It's it outweighs all of that. It outweighs so much. And not saying that those things aren't real, I still deal with a lot of things, and it still tears me down, whether that be from, I feel specifically with relationships, friendships that I used to have. I've had to go through a time of forgiveness. Yeah. Because I held a lot of it close to my heart, because I never wanted to hurt any of them, and I never wanted to cause a scene for anyone, you know. I was just sometimes girls are girls. Yeah. You know? And I was just I'm good. But, at the same time, I needed to accept that, what happened wasn't okay. And I still love those people, and I really do wish the best for them, and I've honestly forgiven them. And I feel with that, weight taken off of my chest, I've been able to really appreciate all the other people that have been, thankful for Fill Your Cup in my story. And I'm if I leave this organization and I only saved, if I leave Miss Oklahoma's teen, all of this, if my whole life changes, maybe I hope to always have Fill Your Cup. My goal is to always have it with me for years to come, even past this organization. But say something happens, I don't even do that anymore, it'll all be worth it if I help save one person. Yeah.
Well, it's just I applaud your vulnerability, because I remember around your age and feeling there was no one that I knew who was going through the same thing.
Because nobody talks about it, especially at our age.
And it's important. And again, I just want to encourage people who struggle with it to not be afraid to talk about it. And like you said, there are going to be people who don't take you seriously. Yeah. But you really have to focus on the people that you're touching, the people that you're helping. And I've posted multiple times on my social medias about my mental health struggle. I was even dating a guy who was you're never going to get a job because you seem unstable.
And you're boy, bye.
I was okay, thanks. Well, my Instagram DMs say otherwise. But, to realize those are not the people that you want in your corner. That's not the community that you're looking for. Yeah. And so to not be afraid to take a step away, you don't have to be rude, but to just be that's not going to be beneficial for me, and I'm not going to be able to be beneficial to you. Clearly, we're on two separate paths.
And you're I'm good with that. No, literally, exactly. Even in a relationship I've been in, I've been okay, God's leading you one way, and I think God's leading me another, and I think we have very different viewpoints on what I'm struggling with.
Yeah. And don't settle, because there are people out there.
Yeah.
Like Ridge, who will do military exercises with you to help you.
I know, faith is the hope that I'm okay, I'll get a little Ridge. Well, I called him Branch. I could never remember Ridge's name.
It's something outdoorsy.
Yeah, I called him, whenever they first started dating, I was with the Thorntons, and I was gosh, I was what's his name? Canyon like Branch or something like that. And they were like, Ridge? And I was
Someone
like, yeah,
called him Fridge. Like, wrote his name Fridge. And I was like, no.
Military guy named Fridge.
Yeah, his name is not Fridge.
You're like, no.
Or Branch.
Or Branch. Okay, Branch. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like that's kind of a lot. Anything else? Encouragement, I guess.
I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Kind of everything I've said. Definitely get the community going. Definitely don't be afraid to journal. Don't be afraid to reach out. Caitlin is a great resource to reach out to. My DMs are always open.
We're like always open. My Instagram _Caitlin Faith, and then fill your cup _ okay. Yeah.
Thought you were asking. Mine's faith.northern. Yeah. Like the direction.
And if like you sorry, I don't know why that
Northern Lights.
If you feel like you don't ever have anyone, like those are at least 3 different resources that even if maybe you get to talking with us and you don't feel comfortable with us, like we have a whole pool of people that are really safe, really special people that you can talk to. But yeah, well, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And this will kind of want to be one of our last moments for you.
I know.
But yeah, so everyone's taking Faith before she leaves. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and yeah, that's all.